think at that point you have to make a decision. The people are so attached to the outcome or so attached to a certain price. It's not even a logical conversation. She's so emotionally connected to that property that she's almost getting in her own way. What is more probable? That she's going to stick at the 1.2, or 2, her caregiver is going to continue to put pressure on her to move into the assisted living place. And the reality is that if you're scared to lose $700, you're never going to make millions. Where it's almost like no matter what you say, they're going to be like, hey, look, this is the value. And if you don't take the listing, they're going to hire somebody that is open to taking that listing at that price. So I think at that point you have to make a decision, be like, okay, look, how motivated are they? And like, is this somebody that I want to work with? And do I feel pretty confident that I can work them down at some point down the line? Because I've had multiple situations like that where I basically, like, the comps are clear. They're like 900,000. I've shared this example before, and the lady's like, look, I want 1.2 and I'm not selling below 1.2. And that's the price that I want to list it at. And obviously, like, at that point, it's not even a logical conversation. It's more like she's so emotionally connected to that property that she's almost getting in her own way in regards to the sale of the property. But like, I knew that this person was moving into assisted living. So what I did, I just said, okay, great. Here's what we can do. Let's try at the 1.2 and let's just see how the marketplace responds. Knowing like, hey, look, like, the market's never going to be there. And then at some point we're going to begin to have that conversation about price adjustments and getting her down. Sure enough, she ended up selling right around that $900,000 range when she was like, look, I'm not doing this. So I think in some cases you have to look at something like that, and if they list with somebody else and they sell with somebody else basically did that same strategy that we're talking about, where they took the listing at the price that they wanted because they knew that they were motivated enough, and then they obviously serviced the listing, and at some point the sellers realized that the marketplace was not agreeing with them, and basically adjusted the price.
Yep. Yeah, I've had it work in my favor, and then the exact opposite too at times.
When you say work in your favor and the exact opposite, what do you mean by that?
Well, I've had some clients where it did work in my favor. Same story that you just gave, where they had to sell, but they were just so in their head that their house was worth more than it actually was. But once they saw that the marketplace wasn't willing to bear that price, like, they understood, like, okay, in order to sell, like, we have to come down, and we ended up selling it. But then I've had the opposite, to where we started high and their motivation clearly, and that was on me, right? Not pre-qualing enough to figure out how motivated they actually are. Do they actually have to sell or not? And then, I ended up losing the listing. Somebody else gets it, and then they end up working them down, right? And then they ended up getting it. So I've had it work in my favor, and then I've had it not work in my favor at times.
Yeah.
And I learned from those experiences, but yeah.
Did they end up canceling on you, or did your contract end up expiring?
Contract expired. Yeah, I never had them cancel on me.
Yeah, it'll happen. I think at that point you just have to make a business decision whether or not it makes sense for you, basically.
Because you think about, obviously, how much money you're going to be putting into whatever marketing. And then obviously there's the time factor. I've learned from some of those mistakes.
Yeah. I'd probably say the money is the least of the challenges. In order for us to get a property on the marketplace, money-wise, comparison to other businesses, it's so much less expensive, It's mostly time. But the money factor is, like, if you compare it to other businesses, how much overhead another business has to have in order to even remain the doors open. I've gone pretty comfortable just kind of like rolling the dice in different situations, I mean, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I'm out $700.
The way I think of it, if it costs me around $500 and let's say it's a $10,000 commission, I mean, I could lose five and gain one, and it's still worth it,
Yeah.
right?
The odds are in your favor, basically. If the risk is 5 to 700 bucks, and in some cases they're higher than 10 grand, some
Oh yeah.
cases they're like 20, 30,000 dollars,
When you're in these situations, I remember what I did with that guy. Now I had that same conversation where I was like, okay, well, if we start high, would you be open to adjusting after a certain amount of time and a certain type of events don't happen, which is showings and offers. Do you bring that up then, like to that lady in that example? Do you bring that up on the appointment, or do you just say,
I,
okay?
I think it's the emotional intelligence, you know? So, like, let's say I do bring that up and they say, no, I'm not willing to do it. But then the caregiver is telling me that she has to move into assisted living. Okay, so what's more true, what she's telling me or
Hmm.
what my emotional intelligence tells me that the probabilities of happening are?
So it's all things considered on what's going on.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
not just what she says. Because, like, let's say I do ask that question and she's like, no, I would not. I'm staying firm on that price, which that's exactly what she was saying. She's like, look, I'm not selling a penny below 1.2. And then the caregiver is telling me, like, no, look, she needs to be in assisted living. She fell. She can't take care of herself anymore. So at that point, you have to ask yourself, okay, what is more probable? One, that she's really going to stick at the 1.2, or two, that her caregiver is going to continue to put pressure on her to move into the assisted living place. And the reality is that a lot of times they do this it's common in certain situations when there's an emotional attachment typically to the property, or they have some sort of attachment to netting a certain amount of money. Basically, I had this happen like maybe like 3 months ago. This guy's like, look, I'm not selling below a penny one. The comps are clearly at $1 million. We list it. He's like, how are we doing? I'm like, look, as I mentioned to you, the market's not responding at all to the price that we're listed at. We ended up adjusting right around $1 million, and he ended up selling right away.
Okay.
I think it also has to do with like even like certain cultures and certain negotiation styles as well too. The comps are what the comps are. And then I've had other situations where I'm shocked. Like I'm like, look, the comps show at 1.1, and the property ends up selling at 1.2, and I'm like, what the hell? So I'm more willing to take the risk, just to kind of see, because the reality is I'm risking $700, and if they become a pain in the butt, I could actually be like, hey, look, this isn't working out, and I've lost $700. Which, if you're scared to lose $700, you're never going to make millions because you're so focused on a small number.
Jose, do you ever have to be careful in how you explain to them, like if they want to go way higher than what the comps are telling them, and you have to be very careful and probably very skillfully, tactfully, like in terms of how you explain to them if the market doesn't respond well, because automatically they're thinking, oh, you're telling me this isn't going to sell. And if you're in a competitive situation with somebody else that tells them it is going to sell at the price that they're saying, obviously you have to come off in a way that's like, hey, we're going to be doing our best effort, putting in all of our marketing and hard work, whatever we do to sell properties, and probably showing them your track record. But you have to, I'm sure, say it in a very skillfully, tactfully way to where they're not thinking, well, you're automatically telling me we're going to have to reduce the price in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And I think it has to do with that conversation that you guys are talking about that conversation of like, hey, look, if it doesn't sell in X amount of time, are you willing to adjust? A lot of times, like, what I would do is have that conversation after I get a contract signed, because this is the way I was taught the price reduction script.
That's smart.
Not before you get a contract signed. The price reduction script starts, to my understanding, at the listing presentation. So they sign the contract, and then the first step is called the talk. Okay, great. So this is what's going to happen next. So I have an assistant. Her name is Monica. She's going to email you a copy of all of the paperwork. You should have it by tomorrow at 5 p.m. She's also going to call you. She's going to introduce herself to you, and she's going to help us coordinate the cleaning lady, the photographer, the staging gal, and some of the clear outs that we're doing. Then what's going to happen next is the date that the property comes on the marketplace, I'm going to give you a call. I'm going to say congratulations to you. And obviously at that point, we're officially on the marketplace. Then from that point forward, I'll be giving you an update every 7 to 10 days and letting you know what kind of giving you an update every 7 to 10 days. Now, do you know what we're going to be covering in those updates? No, I don't. Okay, so these are the metrics that we're going to be looking at, blah, blah, blah. But then at that point, you're basically like, it's not like, I mean, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? You get a contract signed and you have that conversation. They're like, look, I'm not reducing, and you change your mind about the listing, and you just basically say, hey, look, like, to be quite honest, I don't believe this is going to work out. I don't think that we're going to be a good match. That's like the worst case scenario that could happen.
After you've already gotten it signed.
Yeah, after you've gotten it signed. It's easier. I think a lot of people try to have that conversation too in depth when somebody's so irrational at that point, and then they talk themselves out of it. And I've been guilty of it myself when it's like obvious. I'm just like, dude, like, and it's silly because sometimes I've lost listings over like 10, 15, and then sometimes too so for example in our area the market was dropping from March to like November, and then all of a sudden stuff like starts selling really fast, and I'm still presenting almost like as if it was last year basically. Meaning I haven't made the adjustment that, hey, look, the comps last year aren't as reflective as right now because the market has improved already. I had a guy text me. He said, hey, I'm ready to put my home on the market. Are you? Can we do it at 2.2? And I text him back. I'm like, hey, let me rerun some comps. I call him back. I'm like, hey, look, like most of the comps are at 2 million. If it doesn't sell at 2.2, are you willing to do it? He goes, let me talk it over with my brother. Never get the call back. Lists it at 2.2 million. It goes into escrow in a week. And it was listed at 2.2 last year.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's even a combination of like, hey, look, like, where is the market now? And knowing that, like, it's very rarely that we're going to be able to get it 100% right. And all you want to do is be somewhat in a range of where the marketplace is. And as long as you're somewhere in that range, it's easy to either get an offer or work it down whatever necessary amount it is, basically.
Okay.
And then also depending on how unique of a property it is, you know?